wonderful day. I have Bijay Gautam here, who is a podcast mentor. I happened to see Bijay's work through one of the programs that I attended with him, and of course, that he's a fantastic podcaster himself. And that's why I'm very attracted and very happy to actually get him. A little bit about Bijay. He is the co founder for WYN Studio, a host of one of the top podcasts in India called The Inspiring Talk. And I know that he's helping a lot of people, coaches, trainers, speakers, experts, entrepreneurs, everybody to build their influence, authority, and businesses using the power of podcasting. I just came across this beautiful platform by default. I just started because I just, in my second act, wanted to create an impact with whatever I was doing. And I think podcast is that medium, not only that you're able to impact people, but how that impacts your life. And I think this is my biggest learning out of my podcast. So, Bijay, welcome. This is a Discover Your Second Act podcast. Welcome, my friend, and thank you for being on my show.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you so much for that lovely intro. And thank you so much for having me on your show. It's always interesting to be on the other side of, and I'm the one who's interviewing people, but it's always really interesting to be on the other side and being interviewed. So thanks again. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's so many times when I feel, oh, ask me a question, So this is your day. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Though there's a lot of written, I think everything's written about you, of course, and you talk very openly about your life. And that's what I love about you. You're absolutely vulnerable. You tell people that your accent is not the best, but you're still the top podcaster. And then people can actually do it if you can do it. And I think that's what I love as well. So, coming from a very simple background where you did not believe in any of your abilities and you
Mhm.
had written yourself off as a failure once upon a time, what is this Bijay all about? Like, tell us a little bit about your life and how your mindset has changed over years.
Yeah, all my life, I thought that I was an average student, and that's the label that I lived, till my 12th. And, when you are an average student, nobody sort of pays attention to you. You are not in the prime focus of your teachers, because either they will focus on the toppers or they will focus on somebody who is not doing good in the class. So as an average student, your life runs smoothly. There's not a lot of pressure for you, and you also sort of settle with that belief that, hey, you know what, this is who I am and this is what I can do, and being a topper is not for me. And that's what I believed as well. And um, and uh, when I and academically, I didn't have any sort of, I haven't encountered any failure, or any failure in that sense that it was going smoothly. And after my 12th, I wanted to study biotechnology in Kathmandu University in Nepal. I originally come from Nepal, and I sat for that entrance exam. And then once the result was published, I couldn't make it. And that was the moment where I felt that I failed academically, something that I wanted, and then I couldn't make it. That failure did hit hard. And that was the moment I remember at that point when I was standing, looking at that sheet of paper where the people who made it, or the students who made it to the university, was pasted on that wall, telling to myself that, hey, you know what, even if I can't make it to the best university, I'm going to be best wherever I go. And that sort of stuck with me, till now. And that is something that I try and imbibe in everything that I do. So after that, I came to Delhi, and that's where I did my college. And all I had in my 11th and 12th was 68% combined. And in my class, there were kids with 95, 90%, 85%. And the first year of my college, cutting the long story short, I topped my college. Second year, I was awarded as the best student of pharmacy. Third year of the college, I was given full fee waiver scholarship. And final year, I got a job at top pharma company as a research scientist. And from the outside of it, it looked like, wow, this was really, really good. And also, all of this started happening when I started having that strong belief that I'm going to be best wherever I go. And the second thing, I was really invested in learning about things that can really help me become better every single time. And that was my introduction to this whole world of personal transformation and self growth. I was reading a lot of self help books, attending seminars, going and um, watching these talks and so on and so forth. And that all of a sudden started changing the way I was operating. I started shattering the beliefs that I held about myself, and that whole journey of getting better started. And that really made me think that, hey, you know what? All my life I held that label as an average person or an average student, and here I was when I was doing all of this. Now when I look back at back at being topper in the pharmacy college, that doesn't matter at all to me, but that lesson that I was able to shatter or um, kick off the label that I had given to myself for the rest of the life, saying that, this is not what I can be. And here I was doing the things, and that made me have much more stronger self-belief in myself. And, and that paid off is what I would say. So that's, briefly how, things sort of started shaping up for me. And after that, then I did 1.5 years of that job, and then I realized this is not what I wanted to do with my life. And when that realization happened, that if you don't want to be a research scientist, what do you want to be, the answer that came from within was, I don't know. And a lot of people can relate to that feeling where you don't like what you're doing, and you also have no clue of what should be the next step that you should be doing, right? And that's when I said, like, hey, you know what, there are so many interesting people that I have come across in my life through their TED talk, through their books, through their events, and so on and so forth. What if I asked these people and just ask them, hey, how did you figure out what you wanted to do in your life? What's your story? What's your journey been like? And maybe in those conversations, I will find that blueprint that I was looking for myself to make my life successful. And that's how I started getting in conversations with people back in 2017, and started having conversations, and started recording them out and put it out as a podcast. And that has been truly life transforming for me. And my podcast is called The Inspiring Talk. And I always say that if there is one person who is deeply inspired by the inspiring talk, then that's me. Because and that's also the selfish reason that I continue to do it, because I get to learn so much and learn from the best minds you can think of on any topic that I want to dive deep into. So that's how I sort of got into podcasting, and I continue to now do a lot of things around it, right? I run a company called WYN Studio along with my co-founder, where we work with brands. I do teach people, and also we produce a lot of podcasts and so on and so forth.
Beautiful. I didn't want to interrupt, but there were so many questions which were coming while you were speaking, Bijay. And the first thing that I want to ask you then is, was academics something which you put so much importance to at one point in time? Has anything changed now when you look back to say, did I really have to put myself through that? And did it really make me the person who I am?
Yes and no. First, I'll say the reason I say yes is because when I went through that, that gave me the understanding that, hey, you know what, this is not what I wanted to do. And when I did my bachelor's and I was doing the job, my parents want me to go to the US and do the masters, and settle there so that you can have a better lifestyle. You can then support them and so on and so forth. But when I imagine that if I already hate this job so much, if I go and study masters in the same thing, then my rest of my life is going to be in this state that I'm right now, which is the feeling of frustration and deep dissatisfaction with what I am doing in my life. And that thought, Archana, scared the hell out of me, because I didn't want to be an unhappy man. I wanted to be a happy person, right? And I think if I hadn't gone through that, then I would have never known that, hey, you know what, this is where be going. And now when I look back at the academics, and I wish I had, found people or surrounded myself with people who could have given me the, who have shown me the direction, in the sense that, hey, you know what, you should start looking at yourself, and probably these are the things that you are good at, or maybe help me figure out in some way that, hey, you know what, if these are the qualities that you have, then probably this is the direction that you should be taking. And that would have probably changed the trajectory of my journey. I went to college for 4 years, did 1.5 years, almost 3 years of job, which is like 7 years. And then when I look at that, those 7 years, now is something that I could have probably saved. And if I worked on something that I truly loved right after my school, then probably in those 7 years, I could have built something much more meaningful. But having said that, I don't regret, because there are so many people out there who continue to do this till their late 40s, 50s, and then one day they wake up, feeling that, hey, you know what have I done in my life? This is not what I wanted to do. But that happened to me very early on, and I'm happy that it did happen early on, because it's about also asking the tough question to yourself. And the tough question that I asked myself was, hey, you know what, it seems like I'm winning this race, but is this even the race that I wanted to run? And the
Nice.
answer that came obviously was, no, this is not the race I was meant to run. And it's very difficult to be face to face with that reality, that what you are doing right now is not what you truly deeply want to do, and then do something about it. But most of us, first, we don't even dare to ask that question to ourselves, and second, even if we do, then maybe we, a lot of us don't have that belief in ourselves, or we don't have that courage to say that, okay, this is not what I'm going to do, maybe I can change the path. Um, so 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 but to go back and quickly talk about like academics and stuff like that, I more and more I see the world now and the kind of things that people are able to do. My disbelief in the traditional education system is growing every day, because and also because I do run a company and we do hire people, and we do, I have a team of now 15 people, and we haven't hired a single person in our team by looking at their academics qualification and the degrees they hold, but by the values that they hold and the skills that they have. And if we do have like values that they have, and which is a great fit for the culture that we have, and if they are, skilled at what we need them to do, that's one. Second, and the third one is also the mindset to learn new things, because we might hire, people for something, and then, in 2 months down the line, they might be doing completely different that they have never done before. But the mindset of, that learning aptitude, that I'm open to learn, whatever my job requires me to, then I think that's where that's where a lot of organizations are also headed, where they are not hiring people just on the academics and the certificates, but on what is it that actually you bring on the table. So from that, like, my disbelief in academics is definitely growing by the day, with this, the way it is right now, because you investing 4 years and a lot of money and time and stuff like that. I think for somebody to develop, at least for the modern jobs that we're talking about, whether that's in the creator economy and so on and so forth, unless it's like a very professional, like if you need to operate someone or do a surgery and stuff like that, then you need to go through that training, right? Life and death kind of situation. But most of the things now people can learn much faster than
Sure.
you go through that in your college and stuff like that. So from that, I think that people don't really have to do that. But again, um, so that's how I see this.
So, what is it that through life journey that there are probably a couple of things that now you remind yourself about, and you like to share it with people who are looking at us and hearing us today to learn from your life experience? Do you have something like tangible that go through when you wake up every morning and tell yourself, or something that you put in your work and your daily, personal and professional sphere?
Couple of things that I've tried to leave in the past few years is having a monomaniacal focus in one thing, right? Just like a laser sharp focus in one thing. Because with the whole internet and digital and the amount of content that we consume today, it's easy for us to get distracted, and it's easy for us to hop from A to B to C to D with every passing day. Today there is something, tomorrow there's going to be something else, and the day after there's something else, and opportunities are endless and so on and so forth. And also, this is the world where things are getting much faster and quicker. Right now, you get groceries at your home in 10 minutes, and you order food, and your doorbell rings in 20 minutes. So with that, our brain is sort of being rewired to get into this whole sense of instant gratification, that if I am doing something now, then I get something like in an hour or in a day. Amazon delivers stuff. So, and in this age and time where it's easy for you to get swayed with this idea that I can get anything that I want almost instantly, to build that, to remind yourself that anything meaningful that you want to build is going to take time, and it's going to be extremely difficult. And reminding myself that, have that laser sharp focus in what is it that you're trying to build, and give it at least 6 months to 1 year before you say that it didn't work. Now, if you look at my past 3-4 years, the only thing that I was focused on was podcast and podcasting, right? And I said that there could be anything, like there can be Instagram Reel, or there could be TikTok, and there could be anything that can come, but I'm gonna stay true to this one thing and continue building on this, right? And I think that has really worked for me. And I'm not saying this is what everybody should do, but that has worked really well for me. Just having that laser sharp focus in one thing, and not really getting distracted. That's one. The other thing that I have seen, which I also see in a lot of people that I've had conversations, is being truly authentic to yourself and to everyone around you, right? um, and being vulnerable. And being vulnerability means you sharing your life with people, um, you know and being open about it. And that doesn't mean that you need to start telling everything about your life to everyone, but sharing parts of your life whenever you feel comfortable with the world, so that maybe someone else can learn from it. And I love this quote, which goes, your story is someone else's medicine. And when you share your story, it can act as a medicine for someone else. It can heal people, it can inspire them to own their own story and share it with the world, right? And I think authenticity, vulnerability, and owning your story, like, probably what I'm trying to say is, like, when you own and your own story, then you feel the sense of power, where you feel that if you own your stories, your mistakes, or your vulnerabilities, nobody can make you feel bad about you, or how you look, or what are your shortcomings that you think they are, or whatever that is. Then when you own that, then it's the most beautiful thing that you will witness in yourself. And that is something that I try to leave up to, and not try to appear as someone else, but be myself as much as possible and showcase that, right? So that's the second thing that I'll say. And probably the third thing, which I not very intentionally did that, not that I knew that this is how this works, but which happened for me, is just with these conversations, I didn't realize that I was surrounding myself with the people who were operating with the certain kind of mindset. These were the people who were thinking differently than I was thinking when I was working at my job. These were the people who had this vision and purpose, and they were thinking differently. And that sort of
Wow.
helped me build my network. And that network, now when I look at, like, when I, and that network, like, really really helps me to, learn or find the answers that I'm looking for. Or sometimes, just that kick that I need in the butt sometime when I'm not doing it, and something that I need to do. When I look at these people and they're doing amazing stuff, and that acts as an inspiration for me to, like, hey, you know what, let me get back into
Wow.
action. Because the network of the people that I've surrounded myself with are the people who are doers. These are the people who go and make things, and build things and stuff. So I think, having that very strong network of people who can support you, and at the same time whom you can learn from, I think, those are the three things. And the and I would say would be like quick top three that I can share.
I think this is absolutely something that, I wanted to hear as well, because there's sometimes when, you don't know whether you're doing the right thing. You just need to know from somebody, yes, you're on the right track. And like you, I landed myself in default, like I said, in doing podcast, in just putting myself out there fully. So, in the beginning, when I was writing about my even like being very stressed as an entrepreneur, days which when I really didn't even feel like getting up. There were so many people who read, why are you writing this? I mean, like, why are you doing this? And at that time you feel intimidated, you feel judged, and you say, oh, maybe, this is the wrong thing that I'm doing. But slowly what happened was that the more that I was being authentic, the more people started relating to me, and the more they started writing to me and said, we really admire you, and thank you for putting, this is exactly what I wanted to hear today. So I think, thanks for also recreating, Vijay today. So yes, we need to be authentic. We need to have that one laser sharp focus. I have to still reach there. I'm doing various things, just trying to see where I fit in after my corporate life. And of course, the third is building beautiful network. And like, if you're authentic, I think the network comes on its own. People who align with you come on their own. So yeah, absolutely right. Now I want to come, of course, to your podcast journey. Because this is something, when you started off, it wasn't still very few people were doing it, or at least in India, I don't know if anybody was even aware of it so much. So how did that, I mean, really come to your mind? And was it also by default or by choice? Were you following some podcasters? What happened at that time?
Yeah, so I think, you know I uh, wanted to do I wanted to have conversations with people, and
Okay.
that was the core idea, that I wanted to, have conversations with people, learn from their life and journey, and can I pick what I needed to hear at that point of time from these people by asking the questions that, that was questions, lingering on my mind. So
Okay.
that can, I bring people who can answer these questions for me, so that I find the answers that I was looking for. And with that, I thought that, hey, what is the best thing that I can do? And of course, I thought that, hey, it would be great to have a audio video show where, it's a video thing that goes out on YouTube and videos and stuff like that. That's one. Or maybe I can, and when I was doing a bit of a research on what best can I do, given that, I was doing full-time job, and also I didn't have a lot to invest in, equipment and so on and so forth. And then I, came across this word podcast, and I'm like, this looks like an interesting one, but what is this? And then the more I, and then I realized, oh, these are audio files that, people can listen whenever they want. And then I remembered that back in 2011, when I was at my college, when I was trying to motivate myself to study, or maybe, wake up every morning and go for that morning run, and, and get better in my life, I used to download these MP3 files from Robin Sharma's website, and there was another blogger that I used to follow at that point of time, on my phone, and listen to those audio clips. And that time, the word that they put there was podcast, but I didn't pay attention to the word back then. But all of it, like, sort of connected, and I said, damn, this is what I want to do. And when I started, like, putting podcast out and having conversation with people, and then I realized, hey, you know what, this is what I want to do for the next definitely, for the rest of my life is what I thought. But and I strongly feel that I want to continue doing this for the foreseeable future, to have conversations, because I feel that somebody has lived their life like 15, 20, 30, 40 years of their experience, and they are willing to share everything that they have learned, and they have and condense it for you in that 1 hour long conversation. And there's so much value that you can get out of those conversations, right? And that really really changed things for me, and that's how I stumbled upon podcasting, and and never looked back.
Yes, that's very interesting, when you say about like, that how conversations attracted you. And same with me, conversations attracted me also because of the learnings that come out of it. And, people have diverse experiences, they're ready to share it. This is one platform where you get them for yourself, just like I have all your attention right now. Otherwise, I will never get Bijay. So, so it's a platform I don't want to let go. But at the same time, it's difficult to get time of people whom you want to listen to also, because see, somebody has to be interested in somebody's story. And
Yeah.
fortunately or unfortunately, people who are celebrities who are a bit famous, who are known, and like they stand out of the crowd, people want to know more about them. Let's be clear. To
Mm.
have those people on your podcast, it's not the easiest. I've been very lucky, maybe, I don't know, by God's grace. Normally, I don't get a no. So I've been very, very lucky to get people, but it's not easy for everybody. So, what do you think people should really do to also have the right people on their platform?
I think a lot of people think that, hey, what if I go on Instagram and shoot that message and saying that, hey, I do a podcast. Would you like to be guest on my show? And everybody will say, yes, of course. Why not? You do such
Oh,
a great
no.
job of creating a podcast. I would definitely love to be on a podcast, right? But if you really now think about, if you put yourself on their spot and think from their shoes, you will realize that every single day, there are so many people who send them those messages. Then how you are going to stand out? If you do the same thing, then they barely are going to notice you, and you barely are going to get any response, because you haven't given them a reason to respond to you, right? So and this is something that I ask people to do, right? Is a practical tip. If you want to convince anyone to get on a podcast, there is no, let me tell you that there is no magic pill that you swallow and then all of a sudden everybody will start becoming guest on a podcast. It's difficult. I mean, it takes time, but it's not impossible for you to get anyone you want to get on a podcast, right? Let's say you want to get somebody who you really admire as a guest on a podcast. Then start by giving first. When I say giving first, then now if you really think about Archana, let's do this exercise. You can answer me question. Let's say there is somebody that you want to invite on your podcast, and when you go, when that person makes any post or post some meaningful content on their social media or whatever, let's say that person has got 10,000 people who follow them. Out of those 10,000 people who follow them, how many people do you think, like, let's say, would hit that double tap on their post and like it? Just throw some random number. Let's say
Million?
1,000 people, right? Let's say like 1,000 people. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah. Now, out of those 1,000 people, 1,000 people liked it. Now, how many people will take that extra step and leave that comment?
Yeah, maybe like not even 50%, 20, 10, 20%.
Yeah, maybe
Not
let's say
even that.
100 people, right? Maybe 100 people
Yeah, 10%.
will leave the comment, right? Great. And out of those 100 people who left the comment, how many of them will actually leave a meaningful comment? Not like, oh, I like this, or thumbs up, and then emojis and stuff like that.
Not
How
even
many will
1%.
actually leave a thoughtful? Like out of that 100, maybe 5 or 10 people will barely leave that thoughtful comment. Out of those, people, how many of them actually are going to slide to the DM and say that, hey, you know what, Archana, the post that you recently made was really, really meaningful. And I had the similar experience. And when I was doing da 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 da, and then, that happened with me. And when you shared this, it deeply resonated with me. Thank you so much for sharing this. How many of those 10,000 people will do that?
Not even one, or I don't even think one or two.
Yeah. And now think about it. If you have 10,000 people, and if you fall on those 5 people, you first leave a thoughtful comment on their post,
Right.
and then you go on their DM, and then send them this message. You are not asking anything. You are just saying that thank you for sharing this. When you do this first time, what's going to happen? The person is going to read and then maybe not respond at all, maybe check your profile out and then do nothing about it, right? And where you wouldn't even know that that person read or whatever. You do that second time a few days later on their other post. And when you've done that third time, the person is going to say that, hey, Archana, thank you so much for sending this message. Really appreciate you taking time to engage on my post. Now that you have their attention. And then, and once you have done that, and once you have built that trust with them or that rapport with them, and then when they post something which again is in line with what you want to talk with them on your podcast, hey, what you have done right now is really amazing and I really loved it, and I want you to come in, if and it seems that you deeply care about this, and I want to come on my podcast and share more on this topic.
Yeah.
And now when you do that, it's more likely, I'm not saying like people will definitely do that, but if you just send that email or an Instagram message and hope that they will come, the likelihood of that person, responding to you and saying yes, you have increased the chance by at least 70 to 80%. The person is more likely to say yes, because now there were 1,000 people who asked them to become guest on a podcast, but you are the only one person who have taken that extra effort. And Archana, if you remember, and oftentimes, like when people reach out to me, the first thing that I tell them that, hey, you know what? I don't look for anything else, because the only thing that I ask people is, hey, I will be the guest on a podcast, but it has to be 25th episode. And why 25 episodes? Like, why do I want people to invite me on their 25th episode? It's not because, hey, you know what, 25 is a great number or anything, but if someone has taken the effort to release 24 episodes, which is 6 months of content, it shows that the person is committed enough to put the hard work. And I want to value that. I don't care how many people listen to your podcast. I don't care about anything. I just care if you have taken that effort in being doing justice to this medium. Because oftentimes people tell me that, Bijay, I want you to become the first guest on my show. I said, no, I'm not going to become your first guest, but I'm going to be your 25th guest. And also the point that I'm trying to share here is, when these people go and check your profile out, they will also look at how serious this person is about this. Right. And when they go to your profile and it doesn't reflect there, and why should anybody want to come on a podcast, right? So those would be like few quick things that I would like to share for anybody looking at getting guests on their podcast.
So you will be happy to know you're my 90th guest on my podcast.
Awesome. Isn't crazy?
90th episode.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So 10 more to go and I'll be 100. And on 100, I'm planning to do a meet and greet for all the community who's come together to make this possible. So I'm lucky to have people who, like I said, it wasn't so difficult to get people on board and people of substance. So thank you also to you to agree to it. And I'm very, very happy.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you, I'm sorry, there was a faux pas, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, that I did not record it. We had a 20-minute chat and now I'm redoing it. So they say when you redo things, you just might miss out, the earlier tanginess and the essence, but we'll try to make it work. So Bijay, coming back to the question, what will take you to become an author? Because everybody wants to be an author these days. So do I. And especially when we have learnings by abundance from other people whom we can actually compile in a book. So what's stopping you?
I think what's stopping me to write a book, and a lot of people have asked me that, hey, are you writing a book? Are you becoming an author? And on the side note, I have contributed to a couple of books as a chapter of a couple of books, but to sit down and write the entire book of my own, the only thing that's stopping is I haven't given myself a deadline or maybe put a date to it, like, hey, this is when I want to publish my book. And I think it's high time that I start working towards it, because a lot of people have started asking me like, hey, when is your book coming out? And also there's a lot that I have learned in this journey of having conversations with so many people on my podcast. And I think the condensed version of the podcast, where when you read the some 200 pages of the book, where you will get to learn everything that I have learned in the past 4 5 years of these conversations, would be an interesting idea. Now that you have also asked this question, it's high time that I give that date to myself and start executing on that.
Absolutely. And I will be waiting to see and also learn from it as well. Maybe then you have a series of your sessions saying how to become or put your podcast learnings into a book. And
Yeah,
maybe who knows?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's great. Just like you spoke about the life learnings, I want to ask you as a podcaster, what are your podcaster learnings that you want to also share with fellow podcasters so that we learn from your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, and I keep on learning every single day, a thing or two about this, medium, and I love it so much. But there are a few fundamentals that I always ask people to have clarity of, and the first thing that I always ask is like, hey, know why you are doing a podcast, because it's gonna take a lot of your time, efforts, energy, and resources to put together a podcast. You have done almost 90 episodes, and you know the time and effort that it goes in putting a podcast, right? That's the first thing. Know why you are doing it. And I can see that on your background it's written learning through conversations, and that clearly tells me that the reason that you are into this is not primarily because you want to make money, or you want to get famous, or you want to build millions and millions of followers, but you want to learn from the conversations with people, and pick maybe a thing or two which can help you get better in your life. And that's same with me as well, and that's why I do this podcast even after so many years, and get into conversations with people, because that really helped me get better in my life, right? Now, if anyone has the idea like, hey, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast and make a lot of money, then that's not a good reason to jump into it, because you are going to get disappointed with this. I'm not saying that you shouldn't think about making money out of the podcast. Absolutely, you should think about making money out of the podcast, and I'm all for it. And I actually ask people to plan how you are going to make money out of a podcast, plan the funnel, and so on and so forth. But that can't be your primary objective of doing a podcast, right? That's the first one. Have clarity on why you are doing your podcast, because that's the only thing that's going to drive consistency, and consistency is only going to drive success. That's the first one. The second one is, who is your audience? And the more clarity you have about your audience, the better you will be able to serve them. When I started the Inspiring Talk, I wanted to target people like me who were confused in their life. They had no clue of what they should be doing next in their life, or maybe in the darkest phase of their lives, and bring these conversations which can help them sort of get out of that, or give that extra dose of inspiration that they needed. And started featuring the conversations of these successful people, and that's where it started. And now, when I look at it, I've had some of the amazing stories that came from listeners. Some of them wrote to me saying that, DJ, I was going through this really bad phase in my relationship with my wife, and we were going through this tough separation. However, the one thing that really kept me sane was your podcast. Every morning I'll go out for a walk and then listen to your podcast. And when I listened to these conversations of people, that would give hope to me that, hey, what actually I'm going through in my life is not the worst that can happen to me, because the people that you invited on your podcast went through worse. And in that sense, that gave me hope. And somebody saying that, hey, you know what, I was really, really going through the tough phase. I was trying to crack government, job and nothing was working out, and I felt like a failure. And when I listen to your podcast, that really gives me hope that it's not done yet. I can still go and do things in my life. Those stories give you goosebumps, and honestly, I think those are the bonus that I get, because the true ROI of the podcast is you getting to learn and grow so much. And when you get to hear stories like this from your listener, it makes it worthwhile, even if it's just one person do that, right? That's one. And understand like who your listeners are and how you are going to serve them. And the third thing is how your podcast is going to be different, and what is the unique thing about your podcast. What is it that your podcast is going to give to audience which no one else is doing? So those are the three things that I would say. Other than that, like, always, if you're doing an interview based podcast, always know your guest enough, do your enough homework and research. And now let me tell you this: you can buy a microphone and get the person in front of you on Zoom call, and boom, anybody can become a podcaster. And there are so many of them, like there are almost 4 million of podcasts globally. There's no point being just the part of that crowd, that and call yourself podcaster on Instagram and LinkedIn bio. But make sure that the show that you put out is not just another podcast, but you do take that extra effort in creating great audio quality, creating great content, constantly strive to be better with every single episode, and serve your audience.
I think great tips really there, Bijay, because we also just sometimes don't know how should we do the next step better. I'm talking also from my personal experience, because like there's nobody like a mentor. This is a very new industry still, and everybody
True.
has a unique way of presenting, a unique way. So you don't know whether your way is the way, and it's not a medium where somebody's actually telling you that hey, like in social media, that I love what you do. While you release your podcast, there are few who will tell, okay, I relate to it, but you don't get to know majority of your audience, what they are feeling, where they're coming, unless of course you've been there and created a lot of what should I say, engagement somehow. So it's a learning experience. It's something that you also need to hear your heart out to say, okay, am I doing the right thing? Is it value for me? I always ask myself, is it value for me? And I think that helps me a lot as well. But thank you for sharing your tips, and I'm going to really make you my mentor to get to the next level, not leaving you there. So
Absolutely.
let's see how that goes. Vijay, this podcast is about second act, and I feel second act is not really a second life that I'm talking about, or a second innings of your life. Normally, people relate it to that. I'm like, I have left my corporate life, and now this is my second act. It is my second act, but tomorrow morning is also my second act, because there may be some new perspective I'm seeing in my own life, or a change, or a mindset change. So anything that gives me a higher purpose, anything that makes me say, oh, wow, I just feel that's my second act. Is there a second act in your life which said makes you just get up from your bed? It's something that really makes you pop up and say, oh, yeah, that's my second act.
I think, like you said, right, from the perspective standpoint, I'm in the past few months, I have had so many, perspectives, and also, that and everything. And one of the things that I always say is my podcast is the reflection of what's going on in my life, right? If there is something that I'm putting out on my podcast, that means there is something around that topic that's going in my life. Like recently I did a podcast around functional nutrition, and and eating healthy and stuff like that. And that was something that I was discovering and learning for myself. I did an episode around meditation. That means I was trying to really understand and go deeper into the practice, and then find somebody who can help me, right? So from that perspective, um, there is something that new that's coming out, right? And I'm constantly, like I said, right, when you are surrounded with really amazing people, and you are challenged with your way of thinking, and get introduced to the things that you really didn't know. For instance, I was recently introduced to this concept called conscious relationships, and I was not aware of what that was. And and it's such a beautiful concept for any couples or partners looking at taking their relationship, in their romantic relationship, to the whole new level. And it goes really deep. And when I was introduced to that concept, I was like, hey, you know what, I need to learn more about this. Let me find someone. And I got somebody on my show, and then it just blew my mind on the depth that came out of it, right? So now, what my second act is, I would say the curiosity would be the one thing that really makes me like, hey, you know what? We are gonna now. What's the next thing that I'm gonna learn? What's the next thing that is gonna really quench this thirst to be a lifelong student? And and that really and I think the whole idea that, hey, you know what new can I learn? How can I improve my life a little better than where it was maybe a couple of years back, or maybe a few weeks back? Can I do like a small tiny change in my life by the knowledge and information that I get? So I think it's the idea of being curious and a lifelong learner, and like, hey, you know what, getting excited to learn the next learn things, new things, and also go deeper in the things that I already learn. And also, one of the things that I have started do a lot is go deeper inside myself and try and be more and more aware about my thoughts and patterns, and how I operate the way I operate, how I think the way I think. Can I challenge that thought? Is it some conditioning, or is it coming from some sort of conditioning, or where is that coming from? And being more mindful about my act and thoughts.
I think this is one of the best that I've heard in What's Your Second Act, to be a lifelong learner, also to being very aware about the space that you're operating from, how we are responding to things, how we are reacting to things, and how do we challenge our own thoughts. I think it's beautiful, and I'm in the same journey, to be honest. And thank you for, bringing it up again, because when you hear it again from somebody, you say, okay, what you're doing is on the right track. So thanks also for that. We have a rapid fire round, and quick question
Yeah,
on that one.
bring it on.
Good questions. So one person who you really wanted on your podcast, but you've not been able to get.
Oh, there are so many. Like there are so many people that I wanted to bring on the podcast, but also now, my focus on the podcast and how I want to do it has changed, so that keeps on evolving. But I think I'm not so much obsessed with person. Now, right now, like, hey, you know what, this is the person that I need to get on my podcast. Then it will be next week. But the approach that I take, Archana, is I make a list of topics that I want to bring, that I want to discuss on my podcast. And then I go and find the best person that I can bring on the podcast, right? And even if the person A say, like, hey, you know what, I don't want to, for instance, like one of the topics that I want to do next on my podcast is a topic now, around, let's say, dating. Then I'll go and find like who is the person who can really talk about dating. If that's the person who don't want to come and talk about, then I'll find someone else. So I'm not obsessed with person, but I'm driven more by the ideas than the personality. And that's why in my podcast you won't see many popular faces, but you will see the people who really have depth of insight and wisdom that can help audience. Sorry, this was supposed to be short, but yeah.
No, and there are a lot of dating gurus, by the way, I also hear. So maybe you have
Yeah,
luck, and I will be very curiously waiting to hear that one. Whom did you actually
sure,
get on your podcast?
absolutely.
Okay, so my second question is that if Bijoy had to tell this Bijoy 20 years ago a thing that you wanted to tell your younger self, what would that be?
Well, and this is interesting. one of the things that I would tell myself, and I'll give you a bit of a context, again, rapid fire. uh, you know I was home a couple of weeks back, for Diwali, and in my room I discovered this diary of mine, of like 15 years back. That was
Wow.
the diary that I got from 15 years back. And then it was a diary where I noted all the things that would go on, that was happening in my school, and things that I was doing, and so on and so forth. And when I looked at that diary, I felt a bit happy about myself and a bit proud of myself, that even at that point I had written some really nice quotes on it, and saying that, hey, do things that can really bring joy to someone else, do something which can really help other people. And I also remember, do something, on those lines. When I looked at that, I realized that, hey, you know what, I did have some sense of awareness that I need to do something meaningful with my life. So I think the only thing that I would say is just
Well done.
keep yeah, no, I will say, like, keep doing what you are doing. You are on the right track. I
Good.
think that's what I would say, to my younger self.
Very nice. I think that's a brilliant answer, and pat on the back for that one. Okay, so the next one is that if there was something that stood out for you in these conversations, if you remember a quotation, a line, a conversation, somebody's story, what was that?
I think there are so many of those ones, but I think I would say I would pick I'll pick a theme rather than like a particular conversation. But I would say, like, when I've interviewed so many people, right? Recently, I interviewed a YouTuber with almost 10 million followers, and when I met him, I got to see the completely different person, and the person who I saw a warrior, I saw a hustler, I saw somebody who was, like, who thought of himself as an invincible person. Now, I'm not saying from the arrogant point of view, like, hey, you know what, I'm invincible, nobody can defeat me, but invincible from the sense that, having that such a strong desire and self belief, having such a strong self belief in himself, right? And I think, every conversation, Arsenal, leaves you with something that is stuck with you, right? And that's something that, since that interview, I'm releasing that episode today itself, and from that conversation to now, that is something that stuck with me, that how driven this person is, and how committed this person is, to make his life the best life, that he has ever done for himself. So I think, so that when I asked him, like, do you have self-doubt, and he said, like, I think that's the most stupid question that anybody can ask themselves. Like, I don't ask myself, can I do it? But I ask myself, how can I do it?
Wow. Wow.
And
Very
that
powerful.
was
Very
a
powerful.
really, really powerful, right? Where oftentimes we think, like, can I do it? But we don't ask ourselves, how can I do it? If we ask, like, hey, how can I do it? Then it's given that I can do it. Then now you're looking for, you are moving to the next step. Now you are not doubting yourself. I think that was really, really powerful.
You also spoke about some books that you have given a lot of motivation to you. You started to read, and you read also a lot of life related books. Is there something that still is to your bedside, or you pick on it when you are really wanting to read something tight?
Yeah, I think, one of the books that I really love. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and it's written by Deepak Ramola, and I love Deepak for the beautiful
The
way that
50
he
questions.
shares the story. Yeah, 50 toughest questions of life. And sometimes, like, I just pick that book, and it's also a fun activity for me to do when I'm with friends and with my colleagues. I just book that book, randomly open any page, and then ask the question. And each questions, in that 50 toughest questions of life, are very, very thought provoking, and makes you, like, really go deeper. So I think that's the book that I really love. And the other book that recently really made me think a lot, and also introduced me to this concept of masculine and feminine energy, is the superior men, and that book really introduces you to the concept of masculine and feminine energy. It was interesting for me to explore the whole side of it, and then maybe connect a little more with understand like the energy and connect more with that. So I liked the concepts on that book as well, and I would love to dive deeper into into that concept as well. So yeah.
Great. So thanks so much. It was such an engaging session, and thank you for pouring your heart out and just speaking like you always do, very authentic, very real, and very Bijoy. So Bijoy, it's an honor to have you, and I look forward to meeting you soon and having you on my 100th get together very, very soon. And by the way, I'm going to visit Kathmandu in 3 days. We do women
Awesome.
retreats, so we are taking a bunch of
Wow.
women and just spending some time, me time,
How amazing.
self-love, self-worth, self-awareness, as you call it. So we do some work on that one as well. So thank you for being
That's
here.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Archana. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And I know I do my podcast, and you can see we do produce quite a few shows for ourselves and for our clients. And I know the amount of effort it goes in putting every single episode, and you have done 90 of those, and it's no joke. So kudos to you on all the effort that you have put in to spread the knowledge, to enlighten the audience and give new perspective to the audience, and just keep doing what you're doing, and inspire more people, and thank you so much for having me on the show. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much again, and see you soon.